for, I was going to say Battleford Lloydminster.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, this budget and this BIA are increasing taxes on Canadians who cannot afford anymore, parents who cannot afford to put food on their tables to feed their children because taxes keep going up, the carbon tax in particular. And I guess my question, there's the reason why we don't support the budget is because the NDP Liberal government keeps increasing taxes on Canadians. And so my question, Mr. Speaker, through you to the government, is why is the government so bad at mismanaging the calendar that they need to limit debate on every single piece of legislation at every single stage?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would propose the question is, why are the Conservatives so in the way of actually making life more affordable for Canadians? In the budget measures that we have proposed, Mr. Speaker, there are many things that the Conservatives themselves have called for, Mr. Speaker, things that will make it more affordable for Canadians. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we see a highlight of, yet again, misinformation that's being shared around the carbon tax. In fact, 8 out of 10 families get more back than they pay, and it's part of reducing emissions. I happened to overhear a conversation in this place earlier this morning, people talking about the fear of the fires out west. We know we have to do more, Mr. Speaker, to protect the climate, to protect Canadians. This budget has measures for that, and that's why I think we need to move quickly, because Canadians are expecting us to work together on their behalf.
Right on. Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Member for Waterloo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to actually just repeat that last question in a little bit of a different way, because in this place you should have a government and you should have a strong opposition who holds that government to account. But unfortunately what we have is an official opposition who only just gets in the way. So I would like to ask the Minister, why is it that every single time that we are trying to do something and actually result, and what do you hear from the Conservatives? Yelling because they can't handle a woman asking a question and they actually listen quietly. So when they want the floor, they want to be able to speak and be listened to. But when it's their turn to listen, they don't want to listen. So that's what's always really interesting about the Conservative way. So I would like to hear from the Minister, why is it that every single time, and if the member wants the floor, Mr. Speaker, you can give it to him, but I believe I have the floor. So you might want to remind him who has the floor. I would like to hear from the Minister.
Order. I don't know where all this disorder is coming from, but let's get the Honourable Member for Waterloo to finish up the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to hear from the Minister, why is it that whenever we are trying to respond to the very challenging times, the needs of Canadians, why is it that we always have to use these kind of tools to actually get the work done? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition, the loyal opposition, has a very important job, and that is to work with all members of Parliament to make sure that the laws that we pass, the spending that we undertake, actually benefits Canadians. And they have an opportunity today, Mr. Speaker. We can get this bill to committee, and the questions that their constituents have, the comments that they have themselves, the experts that they've consulted with, those kinds of things can be flushed out at committee, as you know, Mr. Speaker. In fact, that's an important part of studying the bill, and so I would urge members to not stand in the way of fairness for every generation. We're talking about, Mr. Speaker, those who need the support. We're talking about measures that will make life more affordable for Canadians. That's all they seem to want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, but when the rubber hits the road, they don't want to do anything.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the Minister why her party hates democracy so much. The fact is that we haven't had a single hour of debate on Bill C-69, a 657-page piece of legislation, and they're already limiting debate. I know that their leader once said he most admires China, and I know they find that the opposition asking questions and perhaps having a different perspective gets in the way. As the member from Waterloo said, she thinks it's terrible that the opposition would actually have a different perspective. Why this minister and this government thinks that debate on government bills is something that should not happen?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
No, I find it interesting to be standing in this place talking about democracy with a member of the loyal opposition who voted against the support that Ukraine needed to defend democracy. Isn't that ironic, Mr. Speaker? That as we talk about whether or not Liberals defend democracy, it's actually this side of the House that works with other countries that are working so hard, in fact, losing lives to defend democracy, and yet they're going to attack our record of democracy.
Okay, I'm just going to stop. Question, answer. So I just want to make sure that we keep our noise down to a minimum.